What we did is review the probable way that this life would unfold if I did decide to go back, because it was a choice whether I was going to go back or not. And my feeling was, well, if I don't go back in this life, I'll go back in a different life, because my sole intention was to come here and I hadn't finished that yet. Right? I knew that Earth was going through this like epic transformation from fear-based consciousness into heart-based consciousness. And I knew that by coming here and going through a journey of transforming, the fears and the challenges that I have lined up for myself, and then remembering who I am, and then sharing that, I knew that that's what I wanted to do in order to be a part of that and to bring more love and to bring more of that consciousness here. And that there were a large group of us that had decided to come here and go through this process and really bring the frequency of love here. But I hadn't done that yet. So I knew if I didn't do it in this life, then I was going to do it in a different life.
My guest today is Heather K. Jones, who at the age of 17 developed toxic shock syndrome and had a near-death experience. And I don't hear about this very often, but Heather had a future review where she saw the possibilities of what her life would be like if she decided to come back to this earth. And one of the amazing things that she saw was that the earth at this time in space is in an epic transformation where it is going from a fear-based consciousness into a heart-based consciousness. So there is so much to learn about Heather's NDE, and I am so excited that she is sharing it here today. So Heather, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad to be here and to share.
Oh, I really, really love your story. I think there's so many parts of it that are going to help people who are watching today. I think a lot of people are in this place where they're starting to wake up, and I'm really excited about what you experienced. So, would you like to just share your NDE since you were so young, any way that you want to share it?
Yeah, I would love to. So I was very young. I was only 17 when I had this experience, and I'm 54 now. So it has been a long time, but I was getting ready for a school dance and I started to feel very sick. And I knew immediately what I had. I knew it was toxic shock. I was using a tampon at the time, and that little warning you see inside the box. I just intuitively knew this is what I had. And I didn't make it to the dance. I went back home. I told my mom that I was sick, and I told my mom what I thought that I had. And she thought that was just the flu. And she said, no, you're going to be fine. And I went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, and I was still very sick. And my mom took me to see someone at this time because I was so sick. And it was a Sunday. So we went to a clinic, like a hospital clinic. And I remember telling everybody there that, I think I have toxic shock, and no one believed me. No one thought that's what it was. They were like, no, we don't think so. We think you just have the flu. So they gave me some pills and they sent me home. And we got back home, and my mom actually went out to lunch with a friend right across the street from where we lived. And within an hour of getting home from the clinic, my body shut down really, really fast. I got very sick very fast, and I was paralyzed from the neck down. And the way it works now that I understand, like all my organs started to shut down, and I was in a lot of pain. But at this point, because I think I was in a lot of pain and because my body was shutting down so much, I started to lift up outside of my body. And it's almost like I was moving into the soul. I wasn't fully in the soul, but I was like kind of floating above my body. And I knew that I was going to die. Like it was an absolute for sure is what it felt like to me. And I was also really at peace with that because I was more in the soul than the body. But anyway, my sister who was home with me, she ran across the street, got my mom, told my mom that I was very sick. Mom came home, rushed to the ER. And when we got there, I was in a very, very bad way. And they told my mom that I wasn't going to make it. They said she's definitely going to die, and you should go say goodbye to her because she has minutes left. I was in really, really bad shape. The blood was leaking out of my veins, and there was a rash all over my body. I was completely shut down. I was paralyzed. I couldn't speak. And again, I was still floating above. But my mom came over to say goodbye. And this is usually the most intense part of the story for me because, she was very emotional saying goodbye to me. And it was during that goodbye that I actually left, that I died. And I went, um, I just left. And I don't remember much. I just remember waking up in this new space. And I always call this space the divine forest because it was absolutely in another realm. It was absolutely in another dimension. I knew I wasn't on earth anymore. I knew I was no longer in the body. And there was such a feeling of it's so hard to put into words. It's absolutely unconditional love, but the way you feel and the way you experience, the way I was experiencing myself now in a light being was so different. I mean, it's like completely different from what we experience here. And it's also a very like a familiar thing. Like it's not like I didn't know this. It was almost like, oh, I'm back home, right? Like, oh gosh, wow, that was crazy. But it was like coming back home is what it feels like. And I remember that I sort of processed my human life and and this happened very fast for me. And I started to sort of step back into my soul self. And in this space, in the divine forest, which had like a clearing, and I was kind of in the middle of the clearing in this forest, like a beautiful ring of trees. Um, there was a being, and this being was a light being, and I knew this being. This being was very well known to me, and I was so excited to see her. It felt like female being, and it felt like one of my spirit friends from when I was young, because when I was young, I had a lot of connection to the unseen realms. It's like I always was very connected to spirits, was very connected to other beings and other dimensions and realms and angels, and that was just a part of my experience when I was young. And this being in the middle of the divine forest was one of these friends from when I was young, and I was just so excited to see her again and so excited to it was almost like we were laughing about it sounds crazy, but we were like, wow, that was a crazy experience. And oh my gosh. And again, we're not speaking with words. It's more like we're sharing an energy impression, I guess is the best way to say it. We're communicating beyond words. We don't have bodies, but it was like a sharing going on and sort of a celebration to be back and for me to remember um, all of this, right? Because when I was there, I remembered why I went to Earth, why I chose to go there, what I was doing there. I understood the grander plan in terms of like the galactic connections. I remembered my experiences on other planets and places and dimensions and all like the larger picture becomes, at least for me, became immediately clear. And I also um I remembered, of course, you remember that you're connected, that everybody is connected in this like giant web of love and consciousness. And so everything is connected to everything else. And all of that was just known to me. And I was sharing with this friend of mine, I was explaining to her that I didn't think the setup that I had chosen for this life experience, I didn't think it was going to work. I was like, I'm not sure this setup is going to work. I'm not sure. And setup meaning like choosing these parents, choosing the challenges I had, choosing all these things, which I fully knew that that's what I had done, that I had specifically chosen this specific life because I knew it would give me what I hoped would give me what I would need to remember who I am and then be able to basically share the frequency of home here to bring the energy of that unconditional love here. And I was telling this guy that I didn't think it was going to work. I was like, I don't know. I have completely forgotten who I am. I'm having a really difficult time. My human is having a really difficult time. It's like we were speaking about that life from a different Perspective, and we were kind of reviewing whether this was going to work. And she was encouraging me that it was going to work. And we didn't do a current life review, or if we did, I don't remember that part. But what we did is sort of review the probable way that this life would unfold if I did decide to go back, because it was a choice whether I was going to go back or not. And my feeling was, well, if I don't go back in this life, I'll go back in a different life, because my sole intention was to come here, and my sole intention, I hadn't finished that yet, right? I knew that Earth was going through this like epic transformation from fear-based consciousness into heart-based consciousness. And I knew that by coming here and going through a journey of transforming, the fears and the challenges that I have lined up for myself, and then remembering who I am, and then sharing that, I knew that that's what I wanted to do in order to be a part of that, and to bring more love and to bring more of that consciousness here. And that there were a large group of us that had decided to come here and go through this process, and really bring the frequency of love here. And but I hadn't done that yet. So I knew if I didn't do it in this life, then I was going to do it in a different life. So what we did is we reviewed, and it's always hard to try to explain it. We reviewed the possible way, all the different possible ways that this life could go, and the most probable way, sort of based on math, that it would most likely unfold. And not like looking at different scenes in my life, but rather looking at like the overall frequency, or the overall arc of the life from kind of a frequency point of view. And because we have free will here, it's not a guarantee that this is how it's going to go. But it's kind of like just looking at, okay, here's all the possible ways this could unfold, and here's the most probable way that this will go if you decide to go back. And the probable outcome for my life was very high. It looked like, oh, you're going to be able to do what your soul wanted to do. You're going to be able to, do what your soul intended to do when it started this life. And I was like, all right, I'm not really sure, but it's looking good. And so then what we did is we reviewed, then, if I decided not to go back, if I decided to start a new life, what would be the outcome of me ending that current life? Like, would there be any negative outcome for me doing that? So again, sort of like a probable, possible way that things could go. And as we reviewed sort of the impact if I left this life now, what I saw in that review is that my younger sister, Laurie, the one who ran across the street and got my mom, and is the reason I'm alive today, if I did not go back, it would be the negative impact for her. There was a probability, a pretty high one, that it would be a negative impact for her. And that made sense, because at this point, my mom was actually sick a lot of the time, and Laurie and I were taking care of each other. We really were like a home team. And so I was like, oh, as soon as I remembered that, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, then I'll go back in this life, right? That's the choice that I made. And as soon as I made that choice, I woke up, and I was in the hospital bed, and I had been in a coma for about 4 or 5 days, and I was just back. Like, I was back, and I was in my body, and I was like, wow, that was fast. But it was sort of like I made the choice, and then it happened very, very fast. And then I was back in my body, and I I remember feeling, I mean, it was a little shocking just because the difference between the feeling there and the feeling here. But I also remember feeling a certain amount of peace. And it's like I brought a lot of that energy back with me, is what it felt like. Um, and so even though my body was still in really bad shape and I was in the hospital for a long time, it took me a long time to heal. I I felt at peace with the choice that I had made. And I was thinking about that experience, but I didn't share it with anybody, because nobody talked about that kind of thing. And I had never heard of anybody having this kind of experience. And I also, when I was young and I would talk about, the different spirits that I was in touch with, or the things that I would feel, or the intuitions that I would get, it didn't go well. I was not raised in a home where that was something that was talked about or understood. And so I already had some fears built up around that, and so I just kept it to myself, and eventually I started to push those memories away because I was also so young and I didn't have the consciousness or the nervous system or just the ability to really process it and no one to talk about it with. So that is basically how it went down.
Wow. That's so many questions and so many parts of this that I think are so significant. What's interesting, Heather, is I've talked to a lot of people who have not just had a near-death experience, but had a coma part. And you were in a coma, I think you said, for 4 days. And your coma did not act the way a lot of the people's comas did. You went into the straight near-death experience and didn't seem to be in almost like this kind of crazy, there's almost usually like a dream state where there are parts that are very almost fantasy like, and yours was not like that at all. So when you came back into the body, did they tell you if you had been conscious at all at any point or responded at all while you were in that coma state? Or were you just completely gone from their perspective?
I was completely gone. And what I was told is that I did pass away and then they brought me back. And then I was in that coma state, completely unresponsive until I woke up.
Okay.
And
Mm.
so I don't know if that experience happened. I don't know how all of that worked, but I wasn't responsive as far as I know.
Did it feel to you? So it's 4 days of Earth time. Did it have a sense? I know time is different on the other side, but did it feel like you were on the other side for a long time because you had a lot of different experiences?
Um, Not really. I mean, it's the time over there is so different and you experience things in a very different way. It felt like we had all the time in the world to review this and to talk about it and to decide whatever was going to happen next, right? It felt like there was a lot of time to do that. It felt very fluid. It didn't feel like there was any need to rush or any concern about that at all. Um, so it didn't, I mean, when I share it right now and I remember it, it actually feels like it happens really fast, right? It feels like even trying to explain it, I'm having to like slow it down because it was happening. I don't know, it's so hard to explain because it's also happening not in the kind of time frame that our mind likes to put it into. So I wouldn't say that it felt like a long time, but it was a ton. We can process and understand information and understand ourselves from such a bigger point of view, right? Our focus here in this body is so different, and over there it's like you are understanding, at least my experience, I was understanding the bigger picture of Earth, understanding the bigger galactic game, understanding so much more. So it's like I was processing these massive amounts of information, but really, really fast and with a lot of ease. So it felt like a lot of information, but it didn't feel like necessarily a lot of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make a lot of sense. So you just mentioned something that I was definitely wrote down that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is the earthly purpose and the galactic purpose. Can you share from your perspective what you understand about that? Why we have what we why what I guess what we're here to experience.
Yeah, so my understanding, well, number one, I think something really positive that I always forget to share, and I've only shared this story a few times, is that through what I saw, the outlook for Earth is a very positive one. Like the heart-based Earth, the heart, this sort of transformation that we're going through right now, which is from these lower frequencies and this fear-based experience into a heart-based experience where we remember more of who we are. We remember that we're all a part of the same one whole. We remember that we love each other, right? That was sort of a definite thing when I was on the others. It was like, oh, okay, that for sure is where we are going, where Earth has decided to go. And I'm excited to be a part of that and to add to that or to be a part of that experience. And so my understanding is that a big reason that we are here is for love, right? As cliche as that sounds, is to remember that we are love. It's to embody that love and then to share that love any way that we can. And in order to do that, we have to deal with what's going on inside of ourselves. Because if we don't have self love, and most of us do not have a lot of self love, I have been on a journey of self love for many, many years, right? Learning how to love these parts of ourselves, learning how to forgive ourselves, bringing ourselves back into that frequency of love. And then we're able to share that love. So it's like a journey of transformation that I knew I was going to go on. And through that journey and through that transformation, I would be able to expand, right? Expand myself, expand how I experience love, expand, just go through this journey of expansion. And through that expansion, I would be helping to expand not only myself, but because all of us are connected to one whole. Anytime we expand ourselves and we go through this journey of transforming ourselves, we add to the whole, right? And so it expands the whole. And so we're here for that expansion. We're also here for expression. So we want to express ourselves as this divine love. And each of us is going to express this divine love in our unique way, right? So expansion, expression, and then just the experience and the adventure of being here, because Earth is a really, from a soul point of view on the other side, like Earth is such an amazing adventure and such a unique experience to have. Like to actually forget who we are and then go through the journey of remembering who we are. It's a very unique thing. And it creates a lot of soul strength. It creates a lot of, yeah, you just learn and expand in ways that you can't do when you're on the other side, because the level of contrast and the level of challenge and the amount of compassion you have to bring to yourself in order to move through those things and in order to transform your fear into love and to be able to alchemize all of that. Like that level of contrast offers a huge amount of expansion. And so it was like this excitement to be able to be a part of that.
So I think that that's a really interesting point, because I know, especially with the free will, we all come here with a different experience that we designed to have. But at the core, I think that there are a couple of key things that everybody is meant to experience. And one is the experience of love, because on the other side, we are love. So here we have an experience of love. But do you think that part of the game is that we are here to all wake up and remember who we are?
I think that possibility is there for all of us to do, but maybe the probability, bringing it back to the experience I have, isn't as high, depending on um, what your role was in this game, right? So we're all a part of the same love and maybe different roles. Maybe you took on a different role because in order to have somebody else go through the ascension or the awakening process, you were going to play the darker side or have that sort of role. But even within that, the possibility of waking up and the possibility of returning to love is always there. And ultimately, because of free will, we can completely forget and not wake up, and we can end up, not going through the sort of intended plan, right? As much as our guides and our spirit will be trying to remind us of that. And likewise, once we're here, we can end up awakening in a way that we couldn't even imagine, because of the free will. And that's what makes the game so exciting, because you don't know. I mean, again, I was looking at like possibilities and probabilities, but you don't actually know until you're actually here and you're doing it and you're playing the game and you're going through your life. So it's an interesting thing. So I'm not sure what the original question was, but basically we all can return to love. And if we don't in this life, the chance to do it is always there. Yeah,
Yeah,
and to
and
do as
the
soon as
chance to awaken too. Yeah.
yeah.
So you brought up something that this takes us down pretty deep rabbit hole. We start to have conversations like this. I think for a lot of people listening, these are the things that I see in the comments. I always see the what if questions. Well, or what about? What about the person who does these bad things? What about this? What about the hell? What about all of those negative things and punishments? But you just brought up a point of something that I completely agree with. And I feel like I understand from also being on the other side, which is that there are people who take on a role because in order to have the contrast, you have to have somebody who's playing a role. And if on the other side, we are love, we're a state of being of love, that means every single soul here, whether you're playing the role of Heather waking up a collective or somebody who assisted you on your journey to show you why love was important or teach you a lesson about something. So will you speak to that? Because I know people have such a difficult time embracing that contrast and they like to label it as people are either good or they're evil.
Right. Okay, well, I will first speak to what I understand about hell because I think a lot of people have questions about that, and I haven't watched any of these NDEs, but I've heard about NDEs where they're kind of this hellish experience that they're in. My understanding of that and what my guides have shared with me is that because we are all one, every single being on the planet is connected and a part of the whole one. When we cross to the other side, we experience everything that we have done to somebody else, pain we've caused somebody else, emotional pain, we experience whatever it is that we unconsciously created down here because now we're back in the one, right? And now it's like we feel all of that. And so that is what people often call hell, right? Is that they're actually either experiencing whatever pain they inflicted here, or they're experiencing their own fears or beliefs about what happens when you die, if that makes sense. But your guides are always calling you back from that creation, right? That trying to guide you through that in a loving way. So it's never that we are separate from love. It's never that we're being punished. It's just that we are experiencing things from a different point of view. But there's no punishment. There's no punishment from beings outside of us. There's more of a feeling of once we get on the other side, oh my gosh, that's crazy, right? Okay, that was interesting. That was an experience, but I would like to learn in this way. But yeah, but in terms of roles and in terms of beings that have decided to play darker roles, a lot of them have forgotten that they're playing the darker roles as well. And so holding that compassion, knowing that even beings that are playing the darker roles and beings that are doing the darkest things on the planet now, they've forgotten who they are. And so there's a lot of trauma there and there's a lot of pain there. And I find the prison system on the earth very difficult because these are some of the most traumatized people on the planet, and of course they're inflicting pain and they're doing things, and but there's no currently there's some people that are starting to go into prisons now. There's one called the oh, I'm forgetting the name, but it's like the prison love. Oh, I can't recall the name, but they go in and they help these people understand why they were doing the things that they were doing. It's because of the trauma inside of them, right? And they are forgiven for that. And they go through a process of healing and all of that. So my understanding is just to hold compassion for all beings, because even beings that are doing the darkest things, they are at their core love. They are at their core connected to us. So I don't know if that answers.
And they also may just be playing that role really well because that's what they said that they would come here to do and take that on. So
Yeah.
somebody else could have the experience of transcending that trauma or pain, etc.
And I don't know if you've heard of the material, the law of one. From the material, the law of one, there's an understanding that there are beings that are here to be in service to self and maybe have chosen that path as a way to explore and expand. And those beings act as the contrast to the ones who are here to be service to all. So there's that idea as well, but that can get really heady very fast.
No, it like that's why I called it a rabbit hole because it
Yeah.
is. There's so many what ifs. I'm curious to know what people think about this in the comments so people can weigh in.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to the law of one because you really had an interesting experience with that 3 books of content. But before we go there, I want to go back to the other question I asked you about. You explained what the purpose of being on the earth was, but you also explained that there's a larger galactic purpose. So will you explain what the galactic is from your perspective, either what you saw or what you understand from your guides, and what the purpose of the galactic is?
Yeah, well, my understanding is that Earth is actually a galactic, there's a galactic soup. There's a mix of a lot of different galactic frequencies here. And currently, Earth is not in a vibration or a frequency. Most of the beings on Earth don't remember that we have a connection to other beings and that there's a larger galactic game going on. And so as we go through this process of transforming from fear-based consciousness into heart-based consciousness, that will start to come back to us, and we will start to connect to the loving beings that we are a part of, that we are connected to, and we will start to become a part of that larger game again, because we are now going to be at a consciousness where we'll be able to be a part of that bigger game, right? But we were kind of, my understanding is that we've been a little bit in a quarantine while we go through this process of evolving our consciousness, because when you're in fear-based consciousness and you have wars and killing and all of these things that are going on, we're not quite ready yet. We're not there yet. But the beings are wanting us to go through this process, wanting to empower us through this. And so they kind of stay hands off so that we can get through that in the way that works best for us. And yeah, that being here, my understanding is that being here also affects the galactic game, because whatever we're processing and whatever we are working on ourselves here, there are parallel selves and beings, and it's way beyond what my mind can even begin to explain. But what we do here also affects the galactic game as well, because there's been lots of lower galactic games and lower creations as well, and it kind of across space and time helps to heal that because of the connection that we have to the larger galactic game. I'm not sure if I explained that at all, but that's my understanding of it.
It is so hard in words to explain these concepts that are so beyond anything that we're taught or that we ever have even heard of. I mean, for a lot of people watching, these are probably new concepts, but that's okay because again, it's one of those rabbit holes that you can explore more about. But you also mentioned that on the other side, you saw some of the incarnations that you had been that were not earthly. Do you have any memory or connections to any of those that you can share?
No, I have no recall of that from my time during the near-death experience. And it's outside of time and space, right? In this game, we think they're past lives and their future lives, but on the other side, it's actually like everything's going on at one time. And so it's like all the lives are happening at one time. And so my understanding now is that if you are connecting to another life in this human experience here, if you're connecting to what we would call a past life from a time point of view, that's because there's something in this current human life that you're looking to heal. There's a frequency, and that other life is there to remind you of what it is you're trying to heal through in this time here. So it acts as a mirror, right? And then same with the galactic beings or the angelic beings. If you're connecting to those beings, it's because you're looking to bring those frequencies and bring that kind of the healing here. So it's sort of like we are connecting to the being, because we are, I mean, it's so vast, the amount of information that we have access to, but our brains, our human brains, actually aren't wired to process or understand or be connected to that much information. And so it's like we purposely veil off certain things just so we can have the human experience and go through this experience. We can't handle, we're not meant to, our brains are not meant to handle that kind of information. And it's why it's even hard to talk about some of these concepts, right? But if we trust that the beings that we are connecting to in this now, there's a divine plan in that, and that we're connecting either to heal something that's going on in our life now, which therefore helps heal whatever's going on in a different timeline or another incarnation or another life, and same with the future lives. But I don't remember on the other side during the NDE, I don't remember any specific lives that I looked at. I just remembered the other experiences I had had. Like it's just so much information so fast.
Yeah, it seems like it would be. When you were on the other side and you were having the conversation with the light being that you recognized from your childhood, and the two of you were kind of giggling and laughing over these experiences, it reminded me, and then you also mentioned that we choose our parents, and there are certain aspects that we pick in order to come in and have this experience. So, we explain from your perspective what you understand about that.
Yeah, so my understanding is that in order to go through this expansion and you come down here to expand, and like I said, to have this experience, and in order to do that, you have to set your game up. You have to have certain things you're going to work through. And so you choose the family you're going to incarnate into because it will give you the experiences that will help you move through the challenges that you want to have. So it's like it's decided because it will sort of anchor in the challenges that you wanted to work on in this life, right? So if I, for example, wanted to work on expressing myself, which is a big thing for me, like being okay expressing my truth and talking about ideas that are kind of outside the box, that is definitely something my soul was excited to work on. I have had a lot of persecution I've had to work through, a lot of fear of being hurt or killed if I shared, even self-love. Like when I put my first website online, I had this incredible fear of being killed for sharing anything that was intuitive or self-love, or even in a higher, in a different realm, anything connected to spirit or self-love. And I came into, the family I came into, my dad had a hard time speaking. That's, and I imprinted that from him. So when I was young, I literally couldn't speak, right? So that challenge sort of activated that within myself so I could go through this experience of transforming that and then being able to speak and share what is true for me. So the family in that way, for that one example, right? Like choosing the father that I had allowed me to sort of imprint that energy from him so the stutter could come alive in my life, so it could be a catalyst for me to learn how to go within, heal myself, and then be able to share.
That's so fascinating, Heather, because you've taken something like stuttering that I think a lot of people would think it was a negative attribute that they had. And you realize that it was there by design to help remind you so that you could work through something, which to me suggests that things are happening for us and not to us. And you mentioned that not only do we pick our parents and set up our game, but we also pick our challenges. So I'd love for you to speak to that, because I think that this is empowerment on another level when people understand that things are happening for them, designed by them, not to them, where they're a victim and powerless.
Yeah, and I didn't start to realize these things until I went through my own awakening at 31. And after I got back from the NDE, I actually went through a pretty dark time. I shut down as much as I could. It was just too much information and it was too much I didn't understand. And I was very overwhelmed. My sensitivities were really overwhelming to me, and I just didn't want to be so connected. So I started to numb out, and I started to drink, and I started to have a destructive relationship with food, and I went down a pretty destructive place where I got very disconnected until I was about 31. And at that time, I started to have almost 10 to 15 panic attacks a day. So it was like my soul was saying, enough. You've got to wake up out of this, right? Like you have gone way, way down a dark path. And so when I started to have those panic attacks, that's when I the panic attack would come, and then the energy would move through me as the panic attack would move through me, and then I'd be able to hear my guides again, and I would get the inspiration to go get a book. Like the very first one I remember hearing was my guide saying, go to the bookstore, go get this book, right? And so I'd follow that and I'd get the book. The book was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, which was so helpful for me. And that started this path of healing for me. And that book, and also starting to be able to hear the guidance inside of myself, that's when I started to remember these things that I remembered in the NDE, which was, oh, wait a minute. I chose this experience, these panic attacks. They're not happening to me. They're actually here to help me. And they're actually here to help me get on the path that my soul intended me for me to have. My soul wanted me to go through this experience. And that was really empowering and powerful for me. And so once I started to realize that with the panic attacks, then I started to apply it to all different areas in my life. And it's not an easy thing to do when you're in a really low place. Like it can be this life can be challenging to say the least. And if you're not in at least a little bit of empowerment and a little bit of love, having that point of view is just frustrating, right? You're like, no way did I choose this, right? But eventually you work up to it and then you're able to look at your life from this conscious point of view and say, okay, if let's just pretend I designed this for myself. Let's just pretend that this is something I wanted to experience because I was going to grow and learn through this. Okay, what am I growing and learning through this? What am I growing and learning through this? And it helped me be able to start to see my challenges and see my life through a different point of view. And it really helped me lift out of a very, very dark place and really deal with all these challenges, because it wasn't just the panic attacks. I was going through a divorce. I was in really bad health. I had been, having struggled with alcohol and these eating disorders. And I had so many things going on. And it really helped me to start to see it through a different point of view, which gave me enough of that higher self feeling in my body to be able to create real change.
That is so empowering. And you're also reminding me of an interview that I did with Christian Sundberg, who remembers his pre-life planning. And the reason that he chose to come to Earth is that he was going through the cosmos and he encountered a being that had a very specific quality to it that he had never encountered before, that he thought was excessively beautiful. And he said to the being, wow, how did you become this? What did you do to become this? And the being laughed and said, oh, I had a physical life and I took on some of these challenges. And Christian said, oh, I want to go do that. And he's like, yeah, they all say, go speak to your guides. But that's what you were reminding me of, that these challenges that we sometimes tell ourselves are hard and we feel like a victim are actually on the other side what we will revere as our greatest accomplishments.
Yeah, and they are hard, right? Like it's not like I want to say these challenges aren't hard. I've had extremely challenging things. But starting to look at them from like seeing them the way your soul sees them, right? Seeing
Mm,
yourself the way your soul sees you, remembering that you are loved, remembering you are supported, and just starting to lift yourself up into that feeling, at least for me, created a tremendous amount of relief because I was carrying so much shame. I felt like I had failed. I felt like my life was just a disaster. I was so upset about the marriage coming to an end. I was so upset about the amount of abuse I'd heaped on my body and just like the kind of life I was living. And it just gave me that sense of, wait a minute, there's a deeper thing going on here. And it helped me a lot. It also helped me a lot having compassion for myself and realizing that even when I was in like the darkest of my dark days and having a really difficult time, I wasn't necessarily trying to hurt myself. The parts of me were trying to find relief the only way they knew how, right? Whether that was through controlling with food or binging with food or over drinking or doing drugs or whatever that thing was. Like this part of me was trying to give me relief, trying to help me to find a way back to a better state of being. And so that allowed me to go through a process of really starting to transform and have a lot of compassion for myself. So,
yeah. Well, the other part I think is that is probably comforting for you is that you've been able to very strongly connect with your spirit guides and to hear your guidance. And it reminds me to remind everybody watching that nobody is ever alone. So, because that's such a big part of you and your life, can you tell people a little bit about their spirit team?
Yeah. I always think it's, we all come here with a spiritual support team. Every single one of us. We are not alone when we're planning this life, when we're deciding to come here. We know it's going to be a challenging time. We know we're going to forget who we are. We know that this is not necessarily going to be um, joyful all of the time. And so we set up a team, like a specific team that is just for us, that is here to help us, that is here to remind us, that is here to guide us and also like be our spirit friends, have our back all of the time. And we forget that, but they're always there, and they're always surrounding us, and they're always with us, and they're within us. And remembering that, at least for me, and in the beginning I could hear the voice of my soul, but I wasn't even truly connecting it to my spirit guides quite yet. It was just enough to get me down the path to go pick up the book and then start to go on a journey to heal. But then as time went on, it started to become much more clear, and I started to remember the NDE, right? Because I had pushed all of that aside. And the more that I did the healing work and the more that I came back into my higher self, the more I remembered what happened during that NDE. And the more I started to search out books where people talked about that. And then when YouTube began, because when I started down this path, I've been on this healing path for over 20 years. YouTube didn't exist, Instagram didn't exist. But when the videos of like people having near death experiences started to come out, I was just like, wow, right? Like it's so confirming to parts of me that were like, wow, okay, I'm not the only one. So I started to remember those experiences. Then I started to remember all the access I had to guides when I was young. And then I started to get that connection back. But what I like to share and what I like to remind the people that I work with is that it's easier than we think to connect. And that if we go within and we actually talk to the resistant part of us that believes that either we can't connect or we're not deserving to connect, or that um, something's wrong with me, or like it's scary to connect, whatever the resistance is, if we go within and we actually speak to that resistance first, ask those parts of those parts of us to relax, we can connect. And I usually just have people connect to their higher self first, because we are our higher selves. We can never be disconnected from it. And so just connecting to this version of you that's in a state of unconditional love, I find that's the easiest way to connect first. But remembering who we are, remembering that we have all of this support, and then helping the parts inside of us that are in a resistant, fearful, scared place relax, then I find I'm able to help people to make connection pretty fast. It doesn't have to take 10 years of meditating or 10 years doing inner work. You can make that connection right from the start. And then that higher self inside of you, that inner healer inside of you, that will guide you through the best way to heal. It will help these inner kids inside of you come back into a balanced place. And so yeah.
That's so encouraging. I also promised everybody that we would come back to your experience with the law of one. And I think people are always looking for different things to connect with to help them on their journey. So will you explain what happened to you with that?
Yeah, so the Law of One, it's a group of books that were channeled in, I think, like the 80s, I want to
Yep.
say. And
Hmm.
I had never heard of them, but I was listening to somebody else and they mentioned Ra and the Law of One, RA, that's the being that channeled these books, and or that, the was brought through. And as soon as I heard it, something just lit up inside of me and I knew I had to go find more. So I did a search online and I found the lawofone.org. And that material, actually, a lot of people find it a little bit dense. It's just a lot. But any case, when I landed on the Law of One website, it's like I immediately, it almost felt like I read all of the books, because it's a series of books, like almost at one time. And I was immediately connected into the cosmic remembrance that I had during my near death experience. It's like suddenly it's like I planted that seed at 17, but I didn't fully open it up until I landed on the Law of One books. And for whatever reason, something in the energy in those books, in that frequency, really spoke to me and really opened me up. And then I was suddenly much more connected to cosmic beings and to other dimensions, and in a way that I hadn't been, before that. I was connected to my guides and to spirit, but after the law of one, it was a little more of a cosmic connection. And I feel more and more people are connecting to that, because I feel we are moving into more of that heart-based consciousness. It is the very beginning of it, from my understanding. We've just started, but that does sort of open up that galactic frequency is starting to come back in. Yeah, so it was a pretty crazy and wild experience, because it was like a lot, again, sort of like in the NDE, you're processing so much information so fast. It's so much more than the mind can understand. That happened while I was in my body. It was like reading all of those books really, really fast. And yeah.
So I know that obviously it's called the law of one, and there is this recognition and talk from a lot of people who've had these experiences that we are one collective. Besides that, what do you think is the biggest overarching message from those books?
I really love they have 3 steps that they share, and I haven't studied these books very much. It's like almost like I got the frequency uh download. I got the energetic information I needed from that. So I haven't studied them as much, but I do remember these 3 steps in there. Well, number one, the law of one is the idea that we're all one being. We're all connected. We're all a part of one whole, and each of us is like a divine spark, a part of the whole. So that is obviously the law of one, which we have forgotten here. Um, right? And then there's
By
of course,
design.
right, because that's the game we wanted to play. Let's forget
Right.
and then let's remember who we are. So that is a lot of what that book is about. But I loved the 3 steps that they share, which is how to come back into a conscious place. And that is to, let me see if I can get this right, to know yourself, which is basically to remember who you are, right? To know yourself, to accept yourself, meaning to go through this journey of self-love, accepts the parts of you that have done some things that maybe you're not proud of, work through the shame, work through these parts of yourself, go through this journey of self-love. And then the third step is become the creator. Yeah. So, and that means to basically, instead of just living your life constantly in response or like reacting to what's going on around you, you're instead saying, okay, I want to create in my life. I want to be able to hold a different frequency in my life. No matter how chaotic the outside world is here, I'm going to create in my own personal life something else. I'm going to remember who I am, and I'm going to create from this space. So starting something that I love to do, and something that's like a practical way to start to do this, and it will actually put you on a journey of starting to recognize what needs to be healed inside of you, is to choose one frequency every single day that you intend to bring more of into your life. So when you wake up in the morning, you can say, okay, what frequency, what feeling do I want to feel more of today? In the beginning, for me, the best frequency was peace, right? Like I was just feeling so overwhelmed and anxious and having 10, 12 panic attacks a day that just feeling peace was where I was trying to get to. So, okay, my intention is to feel peace. And then I would purposely bring, what I do, and I do this still to this day, I would purposely bring myself into the state of peace. Okay, what would it feel like to feel peace today? What does it feel like to feel at peace in my body? If you start to say that, your body remembers what peace feels like, and you'll start to feel that in your body. Or you can listen to things that bring you peace. Affirmations, listening to affirmations at a certain frequency from Louise Hay helped me to feel peace, right? So I'd listen to affirmations, I'd bring myself back into the state of peace, and then I'd set the intention to notice throughout my day, notice more peace, find more peace, see where I'm finding more peace, and also check in with myself throughout the day and say, okay, where am I now? Am I in peace? Right? Because I might have the intention to start in peace, but then you're going through your day and something happens and you're nowhere close to peace. But just to check in, like set alarms on your phone and check in. Okay, am I at peace now? Let me bring myself back to peace. And then as you do that, as you intend and purposely put yourself in the frequency of peace, what happens is everything that's not in the frequency of peace within yourself starts to get loud because you have to integrate and heal that. And so you'll start to be aware of the places that are not peace within yourself, and you can start to help those parts and bring them back into peace. You'll start to be aware of the parts of you that are not in peace. So it brings you on a journey of starting to integrate and starting to get more conscious of what's inside of you, and also start to be more of a conscious creator in your life, because you're just creating, you're focusing on, this is what I want to experience more of this day.
Thank you so much for not only sharing a personal practice, but also giving people the example so that they understand how it works. That's sometimes the missing piece when people share what they do. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that right now there are people who are watching who definitely want to connect with you. So tell people how they can work with you and what you offer.
Yeah, I have coaching. You can go to my site, heatherkjones.com, and you'll see I have lots of group coaching there. I have lots of you can do a one-on-one with me there. Lots of ways to connect with me there. I have been working online now. Gosh, I've been sharing for over 10 years now. So there's a lot that I've created there, and you'll just kind of be drawn to what feels good for you. Um, yeah, but that's what I've got.
Oh, I'm so excited. Heather, thank you. Thank you so much. I know you haven't shared your story a whole lot. I feel so grateful to be able to have a conversation like this. And I want to thank you for what you are doing to help wake up the collective consciousness. It is so needed right now.
Aw, thank you so much. It's exciting to be able to share. It's a big healing step for me, because these are not things that I felt comfortable sharing for a long time. And so I still have parts of me that get nervous before I share, and I can feel those parts coming up. And so it's helping me to move through that and helping me to heal. So I am so blessed to be here. So thank you.
Oh, and of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, listen, share these experiences. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Do you believe that love never dies and you want to hear stories that prove it? Well, hit the subscribe button. You belong here.